Hello, my name is Judy Martin. I live on Manitoulin Island, Lake Huron. I'm from Canada. I want to talk to you about my quilt in Quilt National 2023, Under Drifting Stars. It's a large bed-sized quilt, very lightweight, a summer quilt really. And it has a lot of open space, but also a lot of small repeated marks. And I think the repetition of the mark, the dot, and the size of the piece are partly why when you are in front of it, you feel like you're with nature. It has that kind of a quality of looking at something that is repeated, like the leaves on a tree, or like the grasses in a field, or like the ripples on a lake. It just feels enough space that you can go into a reverie or a dream world when you're in front of it, or I think underneath it. So that was my main inspiration for making this piece once I got my fabric together. And to make the fabric was also pretty dreamy, because it's the dots, the marks on it were all painted first and then embroidered after. And to paint them, I used iron water. Now, experimenting with natural dyes, people who are doing that will quickly learn that adding a little bit of iron powder or a little bit of rusty water to your dye bath, your natural dye bath from leaves or other kinds of plants, saddens the color, or it makes it darker. In fact, it's almost immediate and permanent if you drop a little bit extra iron powder or water onto your perfectly yellow cloth, you'll get a black dot. So when this started happening to me, when I put the cloth on the clothesline and I would get marks from my clothespins that never came out, I thought I would try using iron water as a paint or to draw with. And so that's what I did. I mixed up some water and some iron powder and treated my cottons to cooking them with some tannin, like some leaves, or so they were all off-white. And then took a day in July and took my lightweight cloth. Some of it was smaller pieces, some of it was a larger piece, and painted dots on it. And it was pretty nice just to do those repetitive small marking. Some of them were different, some of them were spaced further apart than others, but still it was nothing very hard to do. You could easily go into kind of a dream world just doing the painting. So that when it came time to make the quilt, it's almost a whole cloth quilt because there's hardly any seams. The seams are just on the lower half, these large triangles, and on the upper half I've got the drawings of cosmic shapes like a crescent and some roundish shapes which could be suns or moons, and of course the dots, which you could read as stars. So what I've made here is kind of like a night sky over water with the reflections of the dots or the sparkling of the water underneath this beautiful horizon line that pretty well cuts it down the middle. I live on an island, and looking out over that horizon line mesmerizes me. I do it every day. I stare at what's going on out there. The colors change so much. But I do it not so much to see the colors as I do to put myself into this reverie that I said before that you get from nature, and going into this inner world that I treasure so much. I find that I get it from looking beyond the horizon, and I get it when I stitch. So stitching this piece, the bottom half is heavier marking over the iron water dots. I used embroidered cotton and made a raggedy satin stitch on each dot of earthy tone colors, so different ones. And on the top half, I outlined all the little dots with black quilting thread and pulled it tight so that they'd puff. So it's very textural quilt just to run your hand over it with just that embroidery is textural, but I also did hand quilt it with horizontal lines of silk thread. So it has a kind of a sheeniness to it too because of the silk thread. White silk was used on the upper half and pink silk was used on the bottom. Yeah, so it's very lightweight, full of texture, and it's a dreamy quilt. I've been quilting for 50 years. I started when I was 20. I was inspired by women's magazines that used quilts as decor, like tablecloths, and you might remember movies from the 70s and 80s that used quilts on the walls. Then traditional quilts. So I was inspired by those, that aesthetic to teach myself. So I taught myself and quickly realized that quilting was a wonderful art medium. This is my 4th time in Quilt National. I actually have a degree in embroidery and quilting from Middlesex University in England that I got from distance education. So I'm very positive that this is a fantastic medium for artists. Not only does it act like a painting or a drawing, but it also refers to the quilt itself. Where you use a quilt, you think about it, it's for the bed, right? And so many things happen in bed. And so one of the main things that happens in bed is sleeping and dreaming. So here you are. Here's your dreamy quilt. Thanks very much for this opportunity to speak about it.